Stop. Something was transferred to you tonight, and you did not choose the timing. This is a transmission from the Arcturian Protocol Keepers. What you are carrying right now, that unfamiliar weight that is not heaviness, that strange clarity about responsibilities you have not yet named aloud, is not confusion. The Arcturian crown, the signal the Council uses to register lineage authority transfer, has already moved. The previous bearer released, you received. These two events happened simultaneously in field time, even though nothing in your surface life has announced it yet. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly why your sense of self has been shifting beneath the words you use to describe it, what is being separated from your path right now, and what the Arcturian Protocol Keepers have already confirmed about this phase. But here is the first revelation. The discomfort you have been feeling is not instability. It is the pressure of a new carrying position, and your resistance to old, smaller positionings is not arrogance. It is accurate. You did not find this message by accident. The separation process that brought you here was already active before this transmission reached you. The algorithm only delivered it. The timing was already written into the field. What feels like an undefined weight pressing on your identity is the crown registering. What feels like an inability to return to old relational ranks is not regression or pride. It is the protocol itself refusing to let you step back into a role that no longer carries your line. Like this transmission, if you know your life has been narrowing for a reason, comment 111 if you recognize that something was transferred to you before you had language for it. Comment, I was separated, if you now understand that what looked like loss was the field clearing space for what you are now being asked to carry. Share this transmission with someone who feels a presence they cannot name and a resistance to smallness they cannot yet explain. This is not just information. It is a live path recognition from the Arcturian Protocol Keepers, delivered at the exact moment the transfer required witness. You were guided here because the separation is already active. What you are carrying right now did not arrive without preparation. The weight you feel, that pressure along the edges of who you have been, is not the weight of failure. It is the weight of a line that has outgrown its previous container. And before anything else becomes clear, you need to understand one thing precisely. What has been falling away from your life is not falling because you are broken. It is falling because the path you are on has begun to narrow, and not everything that was attached to your older positioning can survive that narrowing. Some of what is leaving served you faithfully during an earlier phase of your route. It is not that it failed you, it is that the route itself has changed grade, changed character, changed what it can carry, and the separation you are experiencing is the field honoring that change before your conscious mind has finished processing it. This is the first thing the Arcturian Protocol Keepers require you to receive before this transmission goes any deeper. There is a specific kind of loneliness that does not feel like ordinary sadness. It does not arrive with the same weight as grief, and it does not dissolve the way disappointment dissolves when you sleep and wake again and realize you have recovered. This loneliness is structural. It is the loneliness of someone who has been repositioned but has not yet received the language or the relational confirmation that the repositioning was real. You wake up in environments that once held you, and they no longer hold you in the same way. You speak to people you have known for years, and something beneath the conversation has shifted. You cannot name what changed. You only know that you are now standing at a slight angle to everything that used to feel parallel to you. That angle is not a malfunction. That angle is the path beginning to separate from what it can no longer carry. And that angle accumulates. It starts as something you might dismiss on a single afternoon. A gathering that felt slightly off. A conversation that left a residue of quiet disappointment rather than the warmth it once produced. But then it happens again and again. The angle does not correct itself. It widens. Slowly, persistently, without drama or announcement, the gap between where you are and where your old environments exist becomes unmistakable. You are no longer standing in the same field as what once felt like home. You are standing slightly outside it, looking in through glass that used to be a door, and no amount of pushing against that glass restores what it once allowed through. This widening is not abandonment, it is architecture. The field is constructing the distance required for your next position to become legible. This is what rejection looks like before it is properly named. Not the rejection of being told you are unwanted, not the rejection of a door slammed in your face, the rejection of slow incompatibility, the rejection of a room that was once your size becoming visibly smaller every time you return to it, the rejection of conversations that used to sustain you, now leaving you more depleted than they found you. You have likely attributed this to yourself. You have likely spent time asking what you did wrong, what you changed, why you cannot hold the same warmth for what once held you. You have examined your attitude, questioned your availability, wondered if some internal failure is making everything feel less resonant than it once did. The Arcturian interpretation of this is precise. You did not fail those environments. Those environments reached the end of their assignment to your path. And when an environment reaches the end of its assignment, the intelligence of the field begins the process of separation, not as punishment, but as routing correction. The assignments your early environments held were real and necessary. They scaffolded a version of you that needed scaffolding. They provided the relational density required for an earlier phase of your formation. But a scaffold is not a permanent structure. It is built to support construction, and when the structure beneath it becomes capable of bearing its own weight, the scaffold must come down. The dismantling of the scaffold is not the destruction of what was built. It is proof that what was built no longer needs temporary support. What is falling away from your life right now is not evidence that construction failed. It is evidence that the structure has reached a point of self-sufficiency. The scaffold was never meant to accompany forward. Think of it as a road that narrows before it rises. The narrowing is not the road dying. It is the road concentrating its direction. Traffic that cannot navigate the narrower passage does not disappear because the road became hostile. It disappears because the road has changed its character, and not all vehicles are built for what the ascent requires. The people who have fallen away from your life, the circles that have grown distant, the environments that no longer carry your frequency, they were not taken from you as a penalty. They were separated from you as a preparation. The route is narrowing, the rise is ahead, and not everything that traveled alongside you on the wider road is equipped for what comes next. What has been exposed in you does not need more self-blame. It needs clearer recognition and proper guidance. If you know this message touched a process that has already started, Chosen One Manifest, the protocol for selected souls, was built for exactly that threshold. It is a structured path protocol for those whose route is already narrowing and who need to understand the logic of the separation before fear mislabels it as failure. It maps what is being removed, what is being prepared, and how to move through this phase without collapsing the process by calling it the wrong name. The complete access point is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited window. Now hear what comes next, because this is where the real diagnostic depth begins. There is a phase in every selected line transition where the individual begins to lose environments before they gain direction. This is one of the most disorienting features of path refinement because it appears to contradict the logic of progress. Progress, as most have been taught to interpret it, should feel like expansion, more connection, more confirmation, more coherence between inner certainty and outer evidence. But the Arcturian protocols do not follow that logic at the point of lineage transfer. They follow a different sequence entirely. Separation first, pruning first, reduction of root before the root reveals itself, The old line must become unmistakably incompatible before the new line becomes navigable. And this means that for a period of time, sometimes months, sometimes longer, the selected individual lives inside a gap. Old belonging is gone. New belonging has not yet arrived. The field is not malfunctioning. The field is doing exactly what it is designed to do at this stage. The gap is not a waiting room. It is a threshold with its own pressure, its own demands, its own particular form of endurance. Inside the gap, there is nothing to point to externally that confirms the transition is real. The evidence is entirely internal, a persistent knowing that something fundamental has shifted, accompanied by the absence of any relational mirror that reflects the shift back at you. You know you have moved, but the world around you has not yet rearranged itself to show you where you have moved to. And in that interim, the pressure of carrying a position you cannot yet demonstrate to anyone, including yourself, through external evidence, is one of the most isolating experiences a selected line individual will face. What you may have been calling depression in that gap is something more structurally specific. It is the discomfort of being between lines. It is the experience of an identity that has been separated from its previous anchors, but has not yet received the relational confirmation of its new position. You are not broken inside that gap. You are suspended inside a transition that the Arcturian protocol keepers recognize as one of the highest pressure points in the entire separation sequence. Most individuals who are not carrying a selected line never reach this gap because their path does not require this kind of radical rerouting. The fact that you are inside it, that you have recognized this specific texture of loneliness, this specific weight of incompatibility, is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that your route is being refined at a depth that most paths never require. Here is the next recognition. Pruning does not always feel violent. This is how it disguises itself as ordinary rejection, ordinary drift, ordinary loss. People do not always leave dramatically. Sometimes they simply become quieter. Sometimes conversations that once ran freely become shorter, more effortful, more polished, and less true. Sometimes you remain inside the structure of a relationship, still speaking, still present, while the actual connection has already been severed at a level below the surface. You are performing proximity while the field has already enacted distance. You exchange messages. You appear at the same events. You maintain the social choreography of closeness, while something essential underneath it has already gone dark. And in those cases, the loneliness is most acute because there is no clear event to point to, no clear wound to name, no obvious rupture to process. There is only the growing awareness that what used to connect you no longer does, and the quiet, exhausting work of pretending otherwise until you finally stop pretending. The Arcturian reading of that slow severance is not ambiguous. When a bond loses its field coherence before it loses its social form, it means the separation was initiated at the path level before it became visible at the relational level. The field recognized incompatibility first. The relationship then reflected that incompatibility over time. You are not imagining the distance. You are detecting a separation that had already been registered in the structure of your path before either person had language for it. What felt like you losing someone may have actually been the field completing a separation that began long before the relationship showed visible signs of strain. The field does not wait for social permission to begin its routing corrections. It does not consult the emotional comfort of either party before initiating incompatibility. It reads the line, it reads the divergence, and it begins the process of separation at the exact point where continued connection would cost the selected individual their trajectory. By the time you feel the distance, the field has already made its determination. You are not falling behind the separation. You are catching up to a decision the field registered before you had the awareness to perceive it. This matters because the way you interpret relational loss determines what you do with the space it leaves behind. If you interpret every departure as evidence of your deficiency, you will spend the separation phase trying to repair what was not broken, trying to recover what was not lost, and trying to restore connections that the field has already rerouted away from your line. You will exhaust your energy fighting the pruning rather than reading it. You will invest your remaining relational attention into endings that were already written and miss the early signals of what the separation is clearing space to allow. The Arcturian correction here is direct. Do not spend the pruning phase trying to reverse it. Spend it learning to read it. Reading it requires a specific kind of perceptual shift. It requires you to stop evaluating what is leaving based on whether it hurts and begin evaluating it based on what its departure reveals. Pain is not the diagnostic tool here. Pattern is. The question is not whether you miss what is gone. Of course you do. The question is whether you can see, beneath the missing, what the departure makes visible about the direction your path was always pointed. Every separation is a coordinate. Every departure narrows the range of possible routes until the one that was always yours becomes the only one remaining. And reading it requires you to look at a pattern you may have been normalizing. Look at how many times you have felt almost included, almost understood, almost held by a group, a circle, a relationship, an environment, but never fully, never without that slight undertone of knowing you were not entirely translated. Look at how many times you explained yourself clearly and still came away feeling like the explanation did not land. Look at how many times you watched the shape of what you were trying to communicate get simplified in someone else's hands, compressed into something smaller, something more palatable, something that fit their framework, but no longer carried what you had actually meant to convey. And you accepted the compression silently, because at least some version of you was being received, even if it was not the full version. Look at how many times you moderated yourself, turned down your frequency, simplified your framing, reduced your range, to remain inside a relational space that could not actually accommodate what you were carrying at full expression. That moderation was not humility, it was compression. And you compressed yourself for so long inside spaces that could not hold your actual range that you may have begun to confuse the compression with your real size. You may have started to mistake the edited version of yourself, the one that fit inside the rooms available to you, for the actual version. You may have forgotten what you felt like before you learned to make yourself smaller in order to be kept. The path refinement that is happening now, the narrowing, the pruning, the falling away of circles and environments, is not only removing what is incompatible with your line, it is also ending the conditions under which your compression felt necessary. When the relationships that required you to be smaller are gone, there is no longer a social reason to remain small. The architecture of your smallness depended on the presence of spaces that could only hold you that way. Remove the spaces, and the architecture collapses. What remains is the unedited carrying capacity you have been managing, suppressing, and quietly apologizing for every time it exceeded what your environment could receive. The separation is not just clearing your path of incompatible people. It is clearing your path of the relational pressure that kept you agreeing to be less than what the line requires you to become. There is one more recognition that the Arcturian protocol keepers require you to receive before this transmission reaches its final layer. It concerns what happens at the edge of the separation phase, in the period just before root clarity begins to form. This is the period that most individuals mistake for the darkest moment of their path, because from the inside, it looks like the separation has produced nothing but loss. The old line is gone. The old circles are gone, the old environmental anchors are gone, and the new line has not yet become visible in relational form. You are not yet meeting the people who are calibrated to your actual frequency. You have not yet found the environments that do not require your compression. You have not yet received the external confirmation that the repositioning was real. You are simply holding the position, alone, exposed, uncertain, waiting for something you cannot yet see to arrive. The temptation inside that exposure is enormous. It is not the temptation toward dramatic failure. It is quieter than that. It is the temptation to explain away the entire process, to look at the emptiness the separation has produced, and decide that the field was not refining your route, it was simply taking things from you. To decide that what you interpreted as preparation was actually punishment. To decide that the incompatibility you felt in your old environments was your fault all along, and that if you had simply moderated yourself more effectively, remained more agreeable, compressed yourself more completely, you would still be held by what once held you. That temptation, the temptation to blame yourself for the separation rather than read it, is the final obstacle the pruning phase places in your path before the route becomes visible. This is the highest pressure point in the entire sequence, and it is precisely here that most individuals abandon the path by deciding that the separation was a mistake, that what fell away was needed after all, that the isolation means they were wrong about what they were carrying. They attempt to return to old circles, old environments, old relational configurations, not because those spaces can hold them again, but because the loneliness of the threshold becomes more painful than the compression of the old positioning. They choose the familiar smallness over the uncertain expansion, and in doing so, they interrupt a preparation that was days or weeks from its first visible confirmation. You were brought to this transmission because the Arcturian protocol keepers have registered that you are at or near that threshold. The separation is active, the pruning is visible. The old line has already lost coherence, and the question the field is presenting to you now is not whether the separation happened. That has already been confirmed. The question is whether you will read the separation correctly, or whether you will rename it failure and spend your energy recovering what was released rather than receiving what is coming. What was released from your life was not taken from you. It was separated from you. The distinction matters entirely. Taking implies loss. Separation implies routing. Routing implies direction. And direction implies that the separation, all of it, the loneliness, the distance, the circles that no longer hold, the environments that no longer fit, the identity that no longer recognizes its older positionings, was always moving towards something, not randomly, not as punishment, not as evidence of unworthiness, as preparation. You are not being withheld from belonging. You are being prepared for a belonging that your old line could not have produced. Speak this if you are ready. I do not call the pruning rejection. What is leaving my life is not random. I was not discarded. I was separated. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this separation has already touched your life. It could be people falling away, the feeling of not belonging, repeated distance, unexplained isolation, or the sense that your old path no longer fits. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who feels alone, cut off, or misunderstood, and cannot explain why. And if you are ready to understand the separation, instead of blaming yourself, subscribe to Arcturian Chosen Path. You are recognizing a path already in motion, and this is only the beginning.